I think at this point in time, most of us, aside from our guest today, are pretty familiar with Jeff and the quality of speeches. Jeff is probably, aside from Joy, our most advanced, we'll call him our most advanced new member to Toastmasters. Today he'll be presenting project number 9, which is Persuade with Power. The objective of this speech is Jeff is going to try and convince us of his point and do that in an enjoyable, entertaining, and persuasive manner. So without further ado, I will introduce Jeff Chilson presenting his speech, A Beach Chair Guide to Postmodernism, Part 2, in Defense of the Meta-Narrative.
A mind is like a parachute. It works best when it's open. That catchphrase kind of embodies some of the ideas that surround postmodernism. That, of course, is this philosophy that's very influential today. Postmodernism has within its ideas that truth is kind of unknowable. There's no meta-narrative, no universal standard that's out there. And so like this open parachute, we're just kind of searching for it, trying to find it, grasping it. But is this idea true? Is truth unknowable? I would like to challenge you to use your mind a little bit today. Think about some of the facts. So my goal is to present a critique of the postmodern approach and its philosophy. And I'd like to do that from 3 standpoints. First, from logic. Second, from a historical perspective. And last, from our common experience. Let me first start with logic. Philosophers from ancient times have relied on a very simple principle of logic called the law of non-contradiction. Very simply put, something cannot both be and not be at the same time. For instance, this is not a pumpkin and an elephant. They're mutually exclusive. Postmodernism kind of starts out with a problem at its very start. It says, it is a universal standard that there are no universal standards. It's a paradox. Common sense kind of decries this approach. And they apply this to different cultures. That's part of the idea, is that cultures get to choose what they want to apply in their own society and believe in. So for example, if we have one society over here that says something abhorrent like child prostitution is wrong, and we have another society over here that says something like that is perfectly acceptable, those are mutually exclusive claims. And if these both societies claim that this is a universal standard, how can that be true? So right at the outset, there's a logical problem kind of running around in this postmodern approach. Let me also take a look from a historical perspective. In the postmodern approach, they see that truth changes through time, and that there isn't a universal standard. But I'd like to draw an example from our own history as Americans. You may well recall these words we promulgated a long time ago. We hold these truths to be self-evident, that all men are created equal, that they are endowed by their Creator with certain unalienable rights, and that among these are life, liberty, and the pursuit of happiness. Now, of course, when these words were penned, all men didn't mean all men. It meant white men who owned land. But as we worked on that idea of freedom, in just a few centuries, we expanded that idea. All men, white men, were given the right to vote. Several decades after that, the Civil War, the 15th Amendment was passed. That right was given to all men, regardless of race. Finally, in 1920, of course, women received the right to vote. That phrase embodied, once and for all men and all women. Now, postmodernists would jump at that and say, look, see, your truth changed through all the time. But I say, no, it didn't. The core truth, the central truth, always was the same, this idea of freedom. It's just like when you were in elementary school, did you ever take a bar magnet, sprinkle a bunch of iron filings on it so you could see that magnetic field all around it? Same idea here. That bar magnet, that central core truth was always there, this idea of freedom. And in the very beginning, we were kind of on the fringe as a nation. We kept getting pulled closer and and closer to the universal standard and applying it to more and more of our citizens. So from a historical perspective, we see an example that there is a universal standard that is out there, and it operates and it draws us towards it. Last, let me talk about an example from our experience. And this is one that really gets to our heart. Postmodernism really doesn't offer a solution to anything. There's no statement of general ethics that we should strive for. Instead, postmodernism once again says whatever society determines as far as its own ethical standards, that it's going to work for itself, that's what it should use. But when, in any era of history, has any society ever done a good job of doing that? One group always usurps power over another, and it's really a wish that, in this postmodern approach, that they don't. Nonetheless, in modern minds, just in the last, or the previous century, and even up to the current one, what do we recall? Places that haunt us. Places, names like Auschwitz, Darfur, the World Trade Center. Instead, when we hold a universal standard, a universal truth, and apply it to our lives, we are inspired to achieve ever greater heights. Think about these phrases, and think about their lasting effect on history. They all point to a universal standard. Only thing we have to fear is fear itself. Ask not what your country can do for you, but what you can do for your country. I have a dream that my 4 little children will one day live in a nation where they will not be judged by the color of their character, or the color of their skin, but by the content of their character. Mr. Gorbachev, tear down this wall. Those statements embody the very best of character. The highest things that we can aspire to. Ideas like courage, service, respect, freedom. So when we set a universal standard, we see that we can achieve and reach something that is ever greater. So in the end analysis, we kind of see a little bit of a logical problem in postmodernism. And we see that there is historical examples out there that universal truths are held. We also see from our common experience the difference when we don't choose a universal standard over when we do. So I would challenge you, take the intellectual integrity, look for what is good that's coming your way, and determine, is this really valid? Separate the wheat from the chaff, choose that good, look for the truth. You will always unwaveringly point back to a universal standard, just like a compass. The mind is like a parachute. It works best when it's open. But when it's open, it gathers all the wind and the air it can hold and gather in its folds. And its bearer clings to you with his very life at stake. Cling to those truths you know in your heart.